Morning, world outside, and welcome to the four-post bed. Do you know what? I woke up this morning, I put the news on. I usually put the news on, and I watched 3 different channels. So Sky TV, BBC One, and Al Jazeera. And I try to get as broad an education about what's going on in the world as possible. And I immediately, I woke up in quite a good mood, and now I just feel desolate. Absolutely desolate emotionally. This war in Israel, the Israeli war on Hamas, the children, it's always the children. And then our Home Secretary is currently in Rwanda, and he was at the museum, the Rwandan Museum, commemorating the genocide. Is that the right word? Commemorating? I don't know if that's the right word even. But the museum, is for all the people who were killed in that terrible genocide. The Tutsis, wasn't it? And the moderates, I think. Forgive me for not quoting absolutely correctly. And it's absolutely destroyed my faith in humanity today, honestly. I mean, why? What's the point? Why is there so much killing in the world? It doesn't make any sense. And it always comes down to money, doesn't it? Money, ownership, land. I mean, land is money, isn't it? That's the thing. It always comes down to land and trade and money and consumerism and all these things. So I want to weep about it. I want to cry about it because it's so in my heart that, I've lived this life and I've never experienced war. I don't want to. Today they were talking about, adolescent girls with no access to a toilet. And I'm just thinking, what are they doing? Walking around with blood running down their legs? this is the reality, isn't it? The reality of a growing medical problem where there's blood from limbs blown off, blood from girls having periods, 50% of the population bleeding once a month anyway for 7 days. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, what the F, What the F? Al Jazeera shows... Obviously, Al Jazeera is very pro-Gaza and they're very angry because a lot of their journalists have been killed. There was journalists killed before the war. Well, many journalists killed, in supposed peacetime. I mean, it's absurd, isn't it? The BBC are trying their hardest to be egalitarian in their reporting, to report both sides. But these guys, the spokesman for Mark somebody, I don't know what his surname, I can't remember. I hate him, absolutely hate him. He's a spokesperson for Israel and he's on our TVs every day going on and on and on and on about really what he's saying is that the Israelis are more important than the Gazan people, and that's coming across all the time as he speaks. And he makes me feel sick. Absolutely makes me feel sick. So I'm going to have to really get off my wicks. I think I've got about 100 blog, posts to copy and paste today. I'm going to get those done. And I was going to keep my blog till next June when it runs out. I'm just going to delete it. I mean, it makes no sense for me to be so unhappy with the fact that I'm funding, because even though I've already paid for that website, I paid for it for a year. Despite that, when people search for tell-club or search Telltale Club on Google, it comes up with a Wix site. It's still coming up with a Wix site saying Wix is unable to find this, and then it's got their advertising on it. And I'm just thinking, well, my presence even is paying for their advertising. And you have to make a stand. I really do think you've got to make a stand. And speaking of the art, I'm going to have to do 2 strands of art. I'm going to have to do aesthetically pleasing protest art, because that's what people want on their walls and that's what people have on their clothes, the T-shirts, and that's what people are going to buy. And then I'm going to have the truth, art that people don't want on their walls, because the chances of getting people to buy really ugly art are slim. But I need to do this. I need to talk about how disgusting human beings are. They're grotesque, all of them. We all have a side. I feel like I have no value for Israeli people. That's how I'm starting to feel. And this is how polarisation happens. And, what's important is forgiveness and moving on. It's very difficult to forgive and move on when there's stuff happening every minute that I'm speaking here on my podcast. There are children being killed. It's very difficult for me to stop thinking about it. And it's very difficult for me to be forgiving of the Israelis. But you have to be, and that's what's happened in Rwanda. They were talking about the guy who was showing our Home Secretary, I think it's James Cleverly, around, was saying, they used a word, I can't remember what it was, critical thinking. Instead of, polarising hatred and thoughts, etc. I mean, you put it in better words, it's his job, and it's not my job, I'm afraid. These people who'd lost all their families or who'd experienced this genocide became critical thinkers, and they were then able to forgive. I mean, that's so brave, isn't it? That's incredibly brave. And I mean, the war in Yugoslavia, this same thing happened with the Serbs, and the hatred that spawned from that, and then it passes through generations. It happened in Northern Ireland. And these are the things that I can speak of because they're closer to home and I know a little bit more about them. But you never know everything. You never know everything. And when you start looking at death and genocide and terrible, hurtful, offending, because it is offending, these people are committing war crimes. I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it, that in war, one thing can be called a crime, but in peace it can be, you go to jail for the rest of your life for doing it. That's nuts, isn't it? I mean, all war crimes should be condemned, but they're not. But, I mean, it's just, I do hope we've advanced a little bit. Anyway, I've decided today I'm going to sack myself from social media management. I've fired myself. And sales. I've fired myself. And anything else that isn't art. Or the only thing I'm going to do for the next year is art, because this is part of my 5-year plan. So I'm coming into year 4. Now, my 5-year plan was to be to have a career in 5 years, basically a self-sufficient, freestanding career that's making profit and was successful. And years 1, 2 and 3 have been nothing but hard slog. And I don't really think that the marketing, the social media marketing and the sales that I've adopted have had any, have added strength to the product. The product is me, of course it is. The product is my creativity. So it's very difficult to be a product if you're a creative being. And you're sucked into this, life of selling, regurgitating detail, regurgitating facts over and over again. Buy this, look at me, look what I do, look at my skills, etc., etc. I just thought it hasn't really, it hasn't really got me anywhere. I'm still in a artist's garret, I may as well be on the streets of Gay Paris, begging for my supper and chopping my ear off. That's a reference to previous artists, by the way. Just in case you didn't know. You may not, because not everybody knows about the artists from the last century, Of course they did. We're moving on. So yeah, I just think now year 4 is about absolutely tweaking my product myself. So there's going to be none of that, none of it. I'm drawing away. Obviously I've got my Facebook, which I've got about 5 friends on there who I've known for very many years, who I kind of stick with. They found me. Do you know what I mean? I closed everything down and these people have found me again. And some people enjoy, they enjoy the contact for whatever reason that may be. So I'll kind of stick with that. And then there are a few maybe automated things that go on that I don't really bother with so much. Like when this podcast is always shared with Twitter, for example. So I don't have to do anything. I just speak, talk about my self-worth or lack of it therein, talk about humanity, talk about current affairs from a an old lady view. I mean, really, we have to know that as an old lady, things become less understood. I think you can't help but become distant because you're just not in the thick of it, and your memories are affecting the way that you deal with things, and memory is a bit of a curse, really. A lot of the time, they're also a blessing, of course, but they can be a curse, So I look at things through really the lens of the last century, cumulative years, and the more years there are, the thicker that lens becomes, as it were. Talking of lenses, I'm going to do a lot of photography this year as well. So I'm looking forward to this year. So every day is just going to be art and photography and talking, because I think the talking helps in a way for me validate my existence, and it does validate. It explains, the work, the process, and I don't think people are doing that anymore. You don't see people in their art studios anymore starting things from scratch, because very few people are doing it, and because so much is digital. And of course I love making digital art, but I also enjoy all the other bits, the drawing or the painting. I've got some 6-foot canvas here. It's about time I painted the whole roll. So that's my plan. I might start now. I mean, I don't need an artificial timeline to start January 1st. I may as well start now. So I'm going to close down my Wix, get rid of it, in support of the people of Gaza, and because of my, how much I'm despising the activities of the Israeli army, what they're doing. Absolutely, they're so gung-ho. All of them, because they've all been. There's conscription out there. So everybody, and I know what service people are like. My father was a serviceman. He was in the Royal Navy. I know exactly what they're like. They've got an attitude to blow people up, blast them. There is no... It's protecting Queen and country here. That's what it's like they're indoctrinated. Well, they are indoctrinated. As soon as they sign up, they start pledging allegiance to the Queen. And what the Queen really represents is a state that believes itself supreme. And, this is what's happening with Israel. They see themselves as supreme over the Gazans. The same with Russia. The Russians see themselves supreme over the Ukrainians. I mean, it's so effed up. It really is. There we go. That's enough ranting for today. So, what can I say? It's a bit depressing, isn't it? I'll be in a better mood later. War of the Worlds, I'm serialising it. A couple of chapters going up in a minute. No accident that I've chosen that. No accident at all. You can apply it to current political turmoil. So it's a good one. It's a really good book to listen to. So do enjoy that audiobook, guys. And remember, you can come and find me over at iServalan.com and tellteleclub.com and look at my work.